What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Ryan Moody, Jimmy Smith, our MMA Show. I am actually super excited about this because we did a preview for this, and I want to take a real quick moment to thank Fight TV, one of the best sponsors in the industry. Obviously proud to have them with us. Not only did they provide the pay-per-view for myself and for Jimmy, they also gave it away to one of our listeners, and we are sincerely indebted to them for what they've done for our show and continue to do for our show. But when we look back at Tito and Alberto Del Rio, the reason I'm so interested in Jimmy's opinion is all the shows we've done. Jimmy, you've never came out with such conviction and said, hey, listen, there's obviously some undertones. This could have been a work. You actually said there needed to be blood. There wasn't any blood, but I'm interested in knowing and having watched it. I firmly believe 110% with every ounce of my being that this was an actual fight. I was a little underwhelmed with how Alberto Del Rio came out and it chose to attack Tito. It obviously didn't work. And then obviously Tito got a very, I don't want to say quick submission, but we'll talk about the submission in just a moment. But overall with the performance of this fight, how did you feel about it?
I mean, it went pretty much how we expected. Tito Ortiz, once he's on top of you, that's where he's always been at his best. He's still strong. He still knows how to put weight on you. And it reminded me a little bit. You talk about the quick tap, Alexander Shlemenko, when he fought Tito in Bellator. And I started my MMA career with Tito at Team Punishment back in Huntington Beach. And I can tell you from painful experience, that guy can put weight on you. It's like a fucking steamroller going over you. And I've been through it quite a few times. And so when I saw the look on Shlemenko's face, when Tito took him down, it was the face of a guy who has never experienced anything like that before. Ever. His eyes were huge. It was like, oh my God, what is this? And you really have to get used to it. And I trained a little bit a couple times with Faraz Sahabi, and he has a really disengaging style of jiu-jitsu where he really pushes off and gets a lot of space. It's really hard to put weight on the guy. And he said it's from rolling with GSP all the time because GSP just puts crazy weight and pressure on you. And if you don't get around it, you're stuck there the whole time. You can't do anything. That's what it's like training with Tito. If you haven't learned to deal with like real heavy power on you, you just can't move at all. And it was very quickly apparent once Del Rio was on the bottom. If you don't have world-class jiu-jitsu and know how to alleviate that pressure, you're doomed. And he was, as soon as he went for that takedown and ended up kind of in a wrestling scramble type position, I knew he was done. And that's the reason for those quick taps. Is Tito knows how to put a ton of pressure on you.
Well, I guess that was what I was going to ask. I mean, this is what we've seen out of Tito for a very long time. I mean, this guy that comes out very relentless with pressure, gets someone down, works on elbows, works on ground and pound, works for angles, looks for somebody to get a way out. And if they don't get a way out, he immediately starts to work submissions. And until we see someone that's willing to deal with that, I don't think that we're going to see, especially on these, and I want to be careful how I word this, because Combate altogether put together a very good show. Maybe not names that everyone would recognize, certainly not a whole lot of household names, but if you're going to continue to kind of put him in the ring with these, mid-level fighters or inexperienced fighters or guys that haven't been in the UFC or in Bellator or out at national, global organizations, I really think Tito Ortiz could do this for a very, very long time and look better and better and better while he does it. And that's an interesting dynamic. I mean, we've really not seen somebody other than somebody he used to align with in Chris Cyborg literally just dominate, maybe Justin Gaethje a little bit in World Series, where you have somebody that just dominates kind of these lower levels, builds their name or maintains their name in Tito's case. Do you think that that's something that he can just continue to put together and do?
Yeah, probably. When Ben Askren came to the UFC, for example, I thought he would be successful until he got to those Division I guys, Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Tyron Woodley, who have typically dominated the 170-pound division. There's a similar kind of dynamic with Tito Ortiz, where as long as you keep him away from the wrestlers that could stop his takedown and the big physical guys at 205 pounds that can deal with his pressure, he can keep going for a long time. Tito did well until the game caught up to him. until he started dealing with guys who could deal with his wrestling and could strike. Because that's always been his kryptonite. He couldn't hang with Chuck Liddell in his prime. Forget that third fight, okay? He couldn't hang with the wrestling of Randy Couture, Rashad Evans. When guys started developing to the point where his wrestling wasn't, the ace in the hole it always was, when that was taken away from him, different guy. His career was just on a different trajectory completely. But the problem is, he's still a big name. Or not problem, it's a good thing for him. He's still a big name who can put some asses in seats. He can get a small promotion going. And there aren't a lot of great wrestlers outside of the UFC who can deal with him. Remember, in Bellator, he did okay until Liam McGeary caught him in a reverse triangle and kind of tricked him and did a tricky submission that caught him. But, Phil Davis can out wrestle him. Things like that. And until he runs into those guys, he can have a decent run. And his style ages well. He never took the big beatings that kind of, the one-shot knockouts, the eyes wide shut, where you worry about a guy's health. He didn't take a lot of those. Mostly TKO wins. He was still awake. Now, he's had physical problems. The neck surgeries, that kind of thing, back problems, those might keep him out. But technically, he can go for a long time as long as he doesn't have to deal with the Division I wrestlers, the guys with college experience that can stop his takedown. As long as he can get around those guys, he can keep going for a while. I don't know financially if he wants to keep doing that or what his plans are, if he can afford to not do it, those kind of things. But yeah, as long as you keep him away from the wrestlers who can go to his bag of tricks, which is underdeveloped in terms of his striking, he can still keep going.
Last point with this, now that you've sold me a Ben Askren Tito Ortiz fight, something that really bothers me about Tito is his holding of submissions post-tap. You can't get around it. He did it in this fight. He did it against Chael. And, there's no excuse anymore. You're an adult. You're a man. You're making your living doing this way. And when you go into a gym, your gym, my gym, it doesn't matter. Somebody holds a submission like that after a tap, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because somebody at the gym that's bigger than you is going to get a hold of you and you're going to pay for doing that. And it really, really infuriates me to no end to watch Tito hold chokes. There in the past has been a lot of people that have paid for holding submissions, paid with their careers for holding submissions. And yet somehow, some way, we've let Tito do it in back-to-back fights. And there's no real outpouring from the community of, hey, that has to stop. It is the most disrespectful, least show of sportsmanship you can ever imagine. There's not a whole lot of rules in MMA, right? But the rule is, when somebody taps, you let go. And he continues to show an inability to do that. I get it. It's an emotional fight. I get it. It's a personal fight. But at the end of the day, when somebody taps, you have to let go. Because at some point, Tito's going to tap, and the other person's not going to let go. And I hate to say it, but if he does get hurt, at this point, it's almost what he deserves. Because he's continued to put these people in really bad positions. Especially rear naked chokes. Rear naked choke can kill you. It can crush your windpipe. And he just continues to disrespect the choke and have a referee come in and have to pull them apart. And we've seen instances in the past where when that happens, it can immediately be a no contest. It can immediately be a disqualification. And I just wonder at some point when this is going to catch up to Tito. Because essentially we're letting it be okay.
Yeah, there are a couple things to remember. Number one, he almost got disqualified against Chael. Big John McCarthy told me that he told Tito after the fight, if this weren't your last fight, I'd disqualify you. He said that. If this weren't your last fight, I'd disqualify you for that. And he actually had to thumb Tito in the throat to get him to let go. That's why Tito let go. I think fans and kind of, I don't want to say gave him a pass because some were upset, but it was kind of a look. Chael talked his way into making this fight super duper personal, and Tito made him pay for it. I think because of the opponent, we didn't see that big of a reaction. Because of what had transpired at the weigh-ins, because of how, Chael had carried himself, I think fans, I don't know if they were totally sympathetic with Tito, but they understood why he did it. And a little bit of the same thing with Del Rio, even though it was a little less personal, there was still a little bit of that edge going into the fight. I think that's partly why it hasn't been seen as a huge deal, but he has been warned. And that's one of the side effects of the shows he's in right now. Meaning, I don't think any promoter is going to say, "Hey, we don't want that guy here anymore. He held on to a choke too long. He's out of here." That, do they want to bite the hand that feeds them? I don't think so. Now, a lot of times it's up to the ref and the commissions to do something, but the promoter can say, "We don't want that guy here anymore." But, when he's putting asses in seats and you're a mid-level show and you need him, kind of puts you in a tough spot. But in terms of the fan outrage, I think partly because of the opponent he's done it against, fans have been, less than irate about it.
I agree. I mean, there's some passiveness there. I mean, fans want to see MMA win out over wrestling. Chael has a good group of people that dislike him. And, yeah. Therefore, people look the other way to some of these things. But it is interesting whether or not that's going to impact him, because ultimately I think you also have to worry about a situation where people say, "Listen, I don't want to fight this guy. This guy fights dirty, and I'm not going to risk my neck, my knee, my arm because I'm going to tap and he wants to let go. He wants to let go after I hit it 6 or 7 times." So it'll be interesting to see how they proceed forward with Tito. Obviously, we appreciate, again, Fight TV for all the support they give us. You guys listen to this, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.